Haruto Amakawa shares a moment with his friend Ayase Miharu before shifting to a new city. They promise to marry each other when they reunite and bid goodbye. Time passes by and Haruto is grown up now. One day, he notices a little girl named Endo Suzune in his bus, and then they suddenly die in an accident. Haruto is reincarnated as a boy named Ryo in the fantasy land of Bertram in the year 991. Ryo keeps getting flashback memories of Tokyo and realizes that this is a second life. However, he focuses on avenging his mother who was killed in front of him when he was 5 years old. One day, a group of women led by Miss Vanessa asks him if he has seen a purple-haired woman. Another member named Celia Claire acts friendly with him and notices that Ryo has a lot of potential for magic locked inside him. The girls leave after Ryo gives them some advice, and then he rushes to his friends to show them his earnings. However, he is attacked by an assassin who's already killed in the group. Ryo struggles against the magical warrior, but suddenly a woman appears and helps him access his magic. He manages to defeat the assassin with his powers, and then finds the purple-haired girl who is actually Princess Flora. She asks to be taken to her father and promises a big reward, so Ryo agrees. But then, Vanessa and the others spot them, and Christina Beltram acts aggressively with Ryo, suspecting him to be the kidnapper. Vanessa orders Ryo to come along with them to the king's castle for questioning, and he agrees as he doesn't want to fight them. Meanwhile, a mysterious man named Reese kills the assassin via a suicide bow. Unfortunately for Ryo, he is tortured by Charles Arbor and the Knights Guard as they want him to admit that he kidnapped Flora. Luckily, Flora awakens from her sleep and testifies to Ryo saving her, so Vanessa and Celia rescue him from the ruthless guards. Celia heals Ryo's wounds and then prepares him to meet the king. Ryo greets the royal family in a prestigious ceremony, and the king allows him to study in the Beltram Royal Academy with the other nobles. The other students treat him harshly due to his status, but Celia stands up for him. She also helps Ryo with private tuition, and he makes great progress with his studies. They become close as Ryo tells Celia about his mother, and she offers to become his friend. Ryo also showcases impressive swordsmanship as he remembers his samurai training during his life as Haruto. He studies hard for the exams but also thinks back to his lost opportunity with Miharu. The results are out, and to everyone's surprise, Ryo tops the class along with Christina. 5 years pass by, and Ryo gets selected for the night tournament and manages to overcome the objections raised by his jealous classmates. Now, during a chat with Celia, Ryo expresses his desire to go to Yagumo as his mom wanted to take him there. The next day, the tournament begins and Ryo steps forward to face off against Charles. They fight for a bit and Charles loses quite easily. He objects to the loss, but lead knight Alfred Emery orders him to behave honorably. Later, we also learn that Charles is working for Reese. Flora worries for Ryo as he is unfairly criticized by others in his class. One day, the students go out on a military exercise, and Ryo is once again tasked with carrying everyone's luggage. The group comes across some goblins and defeats them easily. However, Reese is watching from a distance, and he decides to test Ryo's abilities. Later, some orcs attack the group. This makes a student named Stuart panic and bump into Flora, due to which she falls off the cliff. Ryo activates his magic to save her, and he lands safely on the ground. The students eventually take down the orcs, but then Stuart accuses Ryo of being the one who caused the collision. Suddenly, a massive bull monster appears and attacks the group. Everyone runs away except for Flora, who tries to heal one of the injured students. The monster attacks her, but Ryo drops by to save her. He activates his magic and kills the monster in a fierce battle, after which he runs away. At the academy, Celia learns that the authorities are going to lay a false charge on Ryo, thanks to Stuart's lies. Later, Ryo meets her in her room and says that he's going to the Yagumo region. Now that he's a wanted man, he promises to send her letters under the pseudonym Haruto, and Celia bids him a tearful farewell. Ryo makes his way to Yagumo and lands up at a town named Amande. He learns of a famous chef named Lady Lisolette, who creates dishes like pasta that he knows from his life in Japan. Ryo goes to the merchant guild where he meets a woman named Lotte, who helps him with some shopping. She also sends his letter to Celia, and then we learn that Lotte is actually Lizelot in disguise. Later, Ryo runs into a beast girl named Latifa. She attacks him with a poison dart, and they battle for a bit. Ryo eventually defeats her, and then he notices that she has a collar on her. He breaks her free from her imprisonment, and then we learn that Latifa was kept as Stuart's slave and was gravely mistreated. Latifa asks to join him on his journey as she has no one else in this world, so he agrees to it. They bond and become close, with Latifa even referring to him as her big brother. One night, Latifa has a nightmare, and she says that she wants to go back to Japan. This leads Ryo to suspect that she could be the same girl from the bus accident. He tries to calm her down, but then he is attacked by a group of beast women: Sarah, Orphea, Uzuma, and Alma. They assume that he's kidnapped Latifa, so they take him out despite his best efforts to explain himself. Ryo wakes up in chains, but luckily he meets Latifa soon after, and then the girls are made to apologize to him by their elder Ursula. The next day, Ursula takes Ryo to meet the other elders Sildera and Dominic. They express their gratitude towards him, and he asks them to take Latifa into their care. Then they meet Lady Drias, the tree spirit. She senses a person-shaped spirit inside Ryo and states that it is contracted to him. This leads the elders to treat Ryo as a saint. He is taken to a new house packed with all kinds of facilities, and he awkwardly agrees to stay there with Latifa and the girls. Time passes by as Ryo and Latifa become friends with everyone in the village. However, we also see Reese stealing a wyvern egg with his assistant. Ryo and Latifa are officially welcomed into the village, and then everyone celebrates. Ryo has an awkward time with the girls, and then reveals to Ursula that he plans to leave the village soon. Now Reese instructs his assistant to swallow a suicide pill and wait for the wyverns to come closer. Meanwhile, Ryo tells Latifa that he's leaving, and it leads to an emotional confrontation that makes her run away. The elders notice the wyverns approaching and send the girls to investigate the situation. Reese makes use of this opportunity to steal all the other unguarded wyvern eggs. The girls find his assistant and chase after him as he flies to the village. This leads the wyverns to notice the egg, and they head there as well. Reese spots this and crushes the pill to kill the assistant, who then lands right next to Latifa. She notices the broken egg and is attacked by a massive black wyvern. Alma reaches the spot and tries to help her, but the wyvern is too powerful for them. Luckily, Ryo saves Latifa and proceeds to defeat the wyvern with minimal effort, thus making the other wyverns retreat. Later, Ryo and Latifa talk about him leaving, and they finally reveal that they have been reincarnated from their past lives in Japan. Latifa finally agrees to stay with the elders and the girls so that Ryo can go visit Yagumo. The elders give Ryo a lot of extra items that he puts into a space-time cache for easy carrying. Then he bids an emotional farewell to Latifa. Ryo reaches Yagumo and meets an elderly woman named Yuba. He tells her about his parents, and then she reveals that she is his grandmother, and his father Zen was her son. She hints that Ryo's parents had hidden their true identities from him, but she can't tell him the truth for now. Ryo meets and bonds with Ruri, who is his cousin, but he doesn't tell her about it yet. He also impresses siblings Shin and Sayo with his cooking. However, Shin becomes a little jealous of Ryo over his superior skills. Ryo even uses his magic to make a hot bath for everyone, and Sayo slowly starts to grow fond of him. One day, Gon and his goons trouble the girls and hurt Shin when he tries to protect them. Yuba arrives and calms the situation, after which she and Ryo do business with a trader named Hayate. Ryo gives the girls a protective amulet so that he can be alerted if anything goes wrong, and later that night, the amulet is activated when Gon tries to assault the girls. Ryo arrives and almost beats Gon to death, but is stopped by Hayate before he can do so. Ryo figures that he should not become the man who killed his mother, and then he apologizes to everyone for his antics. Hayate arrests Gon and his goons, and Yuba gives him a letter for his master Saga Goki. Ryo and Shin begin to bond over some kamutan, and it leads to Shin trusting Ryo to spend time with Sayo. Now, we see Princess Komomo who is about to be kidnapped, but Ryo saves her just in time, and this news reaches Goki as well. He also receives Yuba's letter and goes with his wife Kayoko to meet Ryo. Here, he tells Ryo that his mother Ayame was of royal blood, and Zen was her bodyguard. They fell in love but had to run away as the opposing prince played politics to arrange his marriage with Ayame. Now Goki takes Ryo with him to meet the king and queen, who are technically also his grandparents. They make their acquaintance, and then Ryo talks about how Zen's friend Lucius had betrayed him and killed Ayame in front of his eyes. Later, the king makes Ryo spar with Goki to assess his skills. Ryo wins easily and bids farewell to his grandparents after finally learning his true origins. He gets back to the village and finally tells Ruri that they are cousins. He also mentions to Yuba that he'd like to leave the village in a year so that he can meet Latifa. He spends quality time with everyone during this year, but also tells Sayo that he's leaving. The news makes her sad and Shin asks Ryo to stay for her sake, but Sayo calms him down so that they can discuss the matter properly. The siblings become closer to each other, and Sayo trains hard to become a capable warrior. Later, she confesses her love for Ryo and asks to join him on his journey. But Ryo says he can't love her back because he doesn't want to put her in danger, as he already has other people he cares for. It breaks her heart at first, but she manages to accept the truth. Now, Ryo bids everyone goodbye and thanks Sayo for her understanding. He goes back to Latifa and she greets him in an overly cheerful reunion. Then Ryo talks to the elders about making a portable house that he can carry with him in the space-time cache. Some time passes by and one day the girls find Ryo in bed with another woman. She turns out to be the contracted spirit that was living inside Ryo, and she refers to him as Haruto. She asks him to name her and telepathically tells him that she knows everything about his past. Ryo gives her the name Aishia and takes her to meet the elders and Drias. Aishia claims to have all elemental powers, so they test her out against Ryo. They battle an intense sequence and Drias stops them before it gets dangerous. Aishia is formally welcomed and Ryo tries to learn more about her. The house is completed, so Ryo decides to leave but realizes that he hasn't been spending time with Latifa. He has a heartfelt conversation with her, where they finally confirm that they were in the same accident together. Before leaving, the elders give Ryo a teleportation crystal and a disguise pen to change his hair color, as he is still a wanted man in the Stral region. He and Aishia visit the kingdom and look for Celia, but to Ryo's surprise, he learns that Celia's marriage has been arranged with Charles. Ryo suspects that the marriage is a result of a political tension and decides to meet Celia to confirm this. Meanwhile, Charles has a dinner with Celia and her father, and he explains how he's going to use this marriage to his benefit. Later, Ryo finally reunites with Celia, and they share an emotional moment. Ryo asks her whether she actually wants this wedding, but she tells him to leave before the guards catch them, as she doesn't want to involve him in her troubles. Ryo is still confused about what's going on and relies on Aishia to help him. The day of the wedding has arrived, and Reese meets Charles to congratulate him. He temporarily senses a spirit and is intrigued. Charles makes Celia meet his other wives, who act rude to her, but then Princess Christina arrives, so they leave them alone. Christina and Celia talk about how Flora had to run away with the Duke to save their lives, and even Christina realizes that Celia isn't happy with her marriage. Now, Celia and Charles move towards the castle, and suddenly, Aishia talks to Celia through telepathy and shows her Ryo who is in attendance. This makes her cry, and Ryo realizes that she needs to be saved, so he begins his plan. Ryo makes his way through the entire squadron and punches Charles, after which he takes Celia hostage and talks to her telepathically. He says this is all a ploy and offers to take her away from here if she wants. Celia agrees, so Ryo escapes the soldiers and fends off an attack from Reese as well. The Griffin squad chases after them and then Ryo hands Celia over to Aishia. Now he acts as a decoy against the squad and takes them on. Alfred shows up to fight him and they engage in an intense sword fight, as Alfred has a strong magical cast on his sword. Ryo doesn't want to kill him, so he escapes in the middle of Alfred launching his finisher move. He meets up with Celia and Aishia at their rendezvous point and offers to take care of Celia to the best ability. They are about to teleport, but then some mountains erupt and Aishia asks Ryo to go help some other Japanese people who've been transported to this world. He rushes to the group and saves them from a bunch of goons, after which he is shocked to see that Miharu is one of them. And that's the end of the show. Like, share, and subscribe for more awesome recaps. I'll see you in the next one.